Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the secret playbook for business analytics. Now, this is a field that has totally changed the game for how companies compete. But to really get it, to understand its power, we've got to start somewhere, well, somewhere you probably wouldn't expect. So, let's kick things off with a story. And it doesn't start in some fancy boardroom, nope. It starts on a baseball diamond. Picture this. You've got a team, not a lot of cash, and they are just sick and tired of losing to the big market giants. So what do? Well, their solution wasn't to throw more money at the problem. It was to think completely differently. Now, you've probably heard this story. It got turned into a massive best-selling book, and then a Hollywood movie, Moneyball. But here's the thing. Its biggest impact, its real legacy, wasn't on the big screen. It was in boardrooms all over the world. It basically showed everyone a brand new way to win. So what did they do? Well, the general manager, Billy Beane, and his Oakland A's, they basically decided to throw out the old rulebook. They ignored all the traditional scouting wisdom. Instead, they just dove headfirst into the data. They started looking for numbers, for metrics that every other team was completely overlooking, things like on-base percentage. And because of that, they could find these hidden gems, these undervalued players who were statistical powerhouses. And guess what? They started winning. A lot. All without a giant payroll. And this idea, this data-driven revolution, it just spread like wildfire. It's not just for the pros anymore, not by a long shot. These days, even college sports are using analytics for pretty much everything. I mean, from recruiting the next star player to creating tournament schedules that are both fair and, don't break the bank. So how does this actually work on game day? I mean, how can data really predict the next play? At its core, it's all about finding patterns. But we're talking about pattern recognition on a massive scale. By sifting through just huge amounts of data, teams can spot these little tendencies, these patterns that give them a huge competitive edge, sometimes before the play even begins. Okay, so check this out. There was this one college football team, and their analysts did exactly this. They took every single piece of their rival's game film, broke it all down, play by painstaking play, and they fed all of that info into a predictive model. The goal was simple, but brilliant. Learn the other team's habits so well that you know what they're going to do before they do. And the result? It's pretty staggering. The model found that in very specific situations, like say it's third down, they need more than 5 yards, and they have a certain group of players on the field. In that exact scenario, their opponent would throw the ball 95.45% of the time. Just think about that. That's not just a little advantage. That is basically a crystal ball. But it doesn't stop there. Analytics isn't just about predicting the other team's next play. It can also act like a spotlight, finding individual weaknesses, the kind of stuff that's almost impossible to see with just your eyes. Take a look at this. What you're seeing is a dashboard that gives a complete breakdown of a single cricket player. It shows exactly what kind of pitches, or deliveries as they call them, he's great against, and more importantly, which ones totally trip him up. If you're a coach, well, this is like a treasure map. It's showing you exactly how to take down a star player by going after their hidden weaknesses. Okay, so these sports stories are cool, right? But what does this have to do with the business world? Well, these aren't just clever tricks for winning games. They actually lay out a perfect 3-step playbook that you can apply to just about any problem you can think of. It really all boils down to answering 3 basic questions, and each one builds right on top of the last. It's simple. First, what's happening right now? Second, what's probably going to happen next? And third, based on all that, what should we do about it? So that first step, that's what we call descriptive analytics. And it is all about understanding the past. Remember that cricket dashboard we just saw? That's a perfect example. It's taking all this raw data from the past and organizing it in a way that tells you a really clear story about what's already happened. All right, next up, predictive analytics. This is where it gets really interesting. You take all that historical data, all that stuff from the past, and you use it to try and forecast the future. That football model, the one that predicted a pass play, classic predictive analytics. It's not just saying what did happen, it's using those patterns to make a really good guess about what's about to happen. And then we get to the final piece of the puzzle, prescriptive analytics. Now, this is the most advanced step. It goes beyond just describing the past or predicting the future. It actually tells you what you should do. Remember that algorithm that created the perfect wrestling tournament schedule? Balancing everything from fairness to travel costs? That's prescriptive. It's not just giving you information, it's recommending the single best course of action. So here's the big takeaway. This whole 3-part playbook, it's not really just about crunching numbers. What it really is a powerful framework to help us with something very, very human, making smarter, more rational decisions. And, this whole process was actually mapped out by a Nobel Prize winner named Herbert Simon. He came up with this really clear four-step model for how we make rational decisions, and it's still, to this day, the foundation for a ton of the analytics work that we do. So Simon's model has four phases. First up is what he called intelligence, and this is all about figuring out what the real problem is. Next is design. That's when you brainstorm all the possible solutions. Third is choice, which is pretty self-explanatory. You pick the best one. And finally, you have implementation, where you actually put that solution to work. But honestly, that first step, getting the problem right, that is absolutely the most important one. And there's this great old business story that just illustrates this perfectly. So there's this hotel, right? And they are getting hammered with complaints about the elevators being too slow. They were this close to spending a fortune on new, faster motors. But then someone had a realization. The problem wasn't the actual time people were waiting, it was how long it felt. People were just bored standing there. So what was their solution? They installed mirrors next to the elevator doors. It was dirt cheap, and the complaints just vanished. Why? Because they solved the right problem. Now, it's really important to remember that this whole way of thinking, this structured, data-driven approach, it's not some new fad. Not at all. It's actually the result of a tech revolution that's been building for, well, more than 50 years. And it's been a wild ride. Back in the 70s, all we really had were these basic static reports. Then the 80s came along with more interactive systems. The 90s were all about building these massive data warehouses. That led directly to the dashboards and BI tools of the 2000s. Then, of course, the 2010s hit, and it was the decade of big data. And now, here we are in the age of AI and deep learning, where the systems themselves are starting to think. So at the end of the day, why does any of this matter? Well, it matters because something that started on a baseball field with just one team looking for a clever edge, that has now become the standard playbook for success in pretty much every industry. That journey from the ballpark to the boardroom has completely changed the way modern businesses operate, compete, and win. But this evolution, it's not over, not even close. As we push deeper and deeper into the age of AI, it leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought. For decades, we've gotten really, really good at using data to help us make better decisions. But what happens when the technology gets so smart, so powerful, that it starts making those decisions for us?